Yes, there have been some surprises. When I first came up with this concept, I was not thinking. There were a lot of things I wasn't thinking about, and one of them was I wasn't thinking of this product, if you will, of these unbound books as gift items. And yet it has turned out, that may seem obvious, to you and to anybody else looking at it now, but I honestly didn't think about that before. I'm not sure why, because it is so obvious. But people look at them, most people, to be honest with you, do look at them first and foremost as a gift item. And people, many people who bought, say, oh my goodness, this is the perfect gift for so-and-so who has everything, but they don't have anything like this because it's never been done before. And so that was a surprise. I think there were a couple of other surprises that were really good surprises. One of them was I had a friend of mine that before we released the book, to sort of test it out and to see what people thought, I gave a copy of Dearest to a book group. And it was really interesting. I was speaking on the phone one day with somebody from the book group, and a friend of mine, and we were talking about other things, and they said, oh, by the way, the book that you gave us to look at. And I said, yes, how's it going? And they said, well, we had a very interesting development in that the book, as I understand, was they were passing it around, the copy, to each member of the book group. And I want to say there were 7 or 8 of them. And they would read it, and then they would pass it on to the next person, and all of a sudden it stopped. And so they said they contacted the individual who I don't remember her name. I want to say it was something like Sally. And so they would contact Sally and say, gee, Sally, have you finished the book yet? So-and-so wants it. And she said, and it turned out, she said, oh, no, I haven't finished it. I can't continue to do that. And they said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, we're reading these people's personal letters, and we're really invading their privacy. And I'm really feeling very uncomfortable about that. And I'm hearing this. When I'm hearing this, I'm thinking, oh my God. I mean, it's wonderful, it's amazing. I almost couldn't believe it, but it was just like this individual was so taken and was so put into the space and the period in the story, and because it was a sensory experience, believed it so much that they didn't think it was fiction. All of the details that we put in, if you will, to the artwork to make it believable, to make you really believe that you're in that period or that you're reading work from that period, actually worked on someone, and they said, no, you don't understand, it's fiction. And they said, no, I've read this. And you have to understand that, no, I've read it. These are people's personal letters. We shouldn't do this. Anyway, they finally did convince her, as I understand it, that it was fiction and that it was okay to finish it and to hurry up and finish it and pass it on to the rest of the group. But that was a surprise. I mean, it is what I wanted. It is the goal of most novelists, most fiction writers, storytellers. It is the goal of storytellers to tell their story and to have it be believed, to have people invested in it in some form, fashion, or another. But admittedly, sometimes when it actually works so well that someone believes so much in it that they almost felt that they were intruding on someone's personal privacy. That was a big surprise, but it was great confirmation. It was like it said success almost as much as anything else before we ever sold the first book, before we ever received an award for the book or for anything else. That probably experience was the first thing that said to me after I hung up the phone, this worked. This really worked. Another surprise was I didn't think of it, and it was not written or conceived as an educational tool. Excuse me. And I received, well, I had actually gotten a call from someone who had told me that an English teacher in a high school had acquired a copy. I don't know how, or because I don't remember the individual, but anyhow, this English instructor had acquired a copy and had decided that they were going to work with their senior class, and instead of reading whatever book they were going to be reading for this one spring semester, she had decided they were going to read Dearest. And she was going to share it with the class. And as I was listening and hearing the story about this, I thought, well, that's great. I never thought of that. Because it's an unbound book, it's probably a librarian's nightmare. It's probably, you know, with all the different pieces that are to it. So I never thought of it as a book that would be in a library. And I never thought of it as something really to use as an educational tool, although I was fascinated that somebody was doing that. And what she was doing was they were taking the story and they were reading it out loud in class. And every class there would be a certain number of letters, and there's probably 100 or so in the novel. They would go through and different people would read. The fun thing about this was, and a surprise certainly I think to her as it was to me, was that she said this was the first time that in her teaching career and she'd been teaching for a long time, this was the first time that she had had students, I gather, tried to break into the school or break into her classroom after school was over, and I guess they were stopped by a janitor. And the reason was because she kept the ending, which is in an envelope. And there's a bit of a mystery in the novel. And so she kept the ending in a locked drawer in her desk. So it was locked away. And there were students trying to break in to get to the ending. And she told me that it was the first time she'd ever had students so involved in literature or in an activity in her English class that they were so involved that they were trying to break in after hours to learn more, to read more. I got a big kick out of it. When that experience was over, the students wrote and sent lots of emails about the experience for them. And so I got a big kick out of that. That was a surprise. I never thought of it as an educational tool. But she was using it to talk about the language of the period, the writing of the period, and the writing form of the period, and other aspects. So, which was great. Another surprise was, and maybe one of the biggest surprises of all, and I'm a little bit ashamed on this one because I'm a playwright and I should have anticipated this, or I should have thought of this, and I didn't. This is I wanted very much for this to come alive, and I wanted for the reader. And I wanted to bring some of the sensibilities, anyhow, that I have as a playwright to the novel, to the making of a novel, and have it be as much of an experience, a sensory experience, as it could be. But readers really took that to places that I didn't think of, which, as I explained to you, you go, well, that's obvious. But it wasn't obvious to me because I was really surprised. And that is that people were reading this out loud. I received an email from a couple, from a woman, and she said it was a thank you, and she said, thank you so much for the experience of this novel. We really enjoyed it. And she said, my husband and I are avid readers. And very, very often after dinner, we will have our books and, retire to each end of the sofa and alone or by ourselves and read. And she said, we didn't do that with this novel. We decided to read the letters out loud. And because the correspondence in Dearest is predominantly the letters between a man and a woman, and is a love story, he read the man's letters to her, and she read the woman's letters to him. And that is how they experienced this novel together. And she said it was the first time that they'd ever had an experience in literature together, that they'd always had their separate books they were reading. This was something that brought them together, and she wanted to thank me for that also, which was very kind of her, and really very special for me because, I can see how, wow, that's a great idea. But it wasn't my idea. It really wasn't. I think I would like to say it was, but it wasn't. I just was really surprised, and I'm still surprised. I'm not surprised that people are doing it. I'm surprised that I didn't think about it ahead of time. Because to me, in some ways, it is sort of an obvious thing for it to be a very easy thing for different people to become involved in that way.